So, speaking of podcasts, welcome to the podcast and Magic Without Fears, Hermetic podcast. Daniel Rekshan. I'm Frater RC, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
I love your outer space background. We were just chatting about that a bit before, and yeah. So I've been trying to dream well.
Great.
There's this app called the DREAMWELL app. Have you heard of it?
Oh, I have. I use it to sleep well, dream well, and be well. And it's actually improved my dream recall frequency and motivation around. And I'm serious. The streak gets me going. We do a streak tracker. So I'm the chief dream officer of DREAMWELL, and we've installed like streak trackers. Like, oh, you checked in with us every morning, and now I have a little bit of a streak. I get off sometimes because my baby. But yeah, glad.
Yeah, your voice sounds remarkably similar to the Velveteen Rabbits.
Yeah. Well, that's actually my twin brother. My twin brother recorded the Velveteen Rabbit. I record Henri Bergson, Aristotle. I've got some other like more esoteric stuff around dreams because I did a deep dive into like what do the old Western classicists kind of say about dreams. So I read all of those. And they sort of like, all right, this is great, but let's have more palatable sort of stories as well. So my brother does that. He does the sleepy sleep techniques too. So he was a sleep scientist for a while, and he's done he goes like, and now we're going to do the sort of scientific sleep-based techniques. And I end up doing the dream-based stuff where I'm inviting you onto a journey. It's imaginal, it's wonderful. You're connecting with dream characters. So I think that's been a setup actually from before life to do this work together and bring it forward. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool to get to work with your brother on something so creative. I really thought it was your voice actually, of course, because I'm lying in bed having a hard time sleeping. I've been on these antibiotics, and it's just trashing me. So if I look worn out, antibiotics. I don't know what they do besides the thing that you want them to do, but it's not good. Yeah. The thing I want them to do is very good. The rest, so I haven't been sleeping well. But this is the last day of them, so yay. Yeah, so I listened to the Velveteen Rabbit. I was having trouble another night, and the Office didn't do the trick, so I put on the white noise binaural beats one. What is up with that? Like, I've done some binaural beats magical work in the past with some courses by Jason Augustus Newcomb and his new Hermetics. But what is up? So when I put on the white noise beats, white noise binaural beats, I believe that I'm calling it right. And this is actually one of the free qualities on the app because I've started with the beginning. I wanted to be able to tell people what I thought of it, right? I've already told all my students and friends what I think so far, and I look forward to keep exploring it because it's dreams. It's very interesting, and sleep is yummy. If we can improve that, I'm hoping we'll get some good advice from you on this that you haven't already said a million times other places, if that's possible.
Oh yeah, so I heard questions around sleeping well, what advice around that in the binaural beats. So what's going on with the binaural beats?
What's up with that one first? Because that actually directly affects me.
Yeah, so that track actually was produced by my other brother, who coincidentally is like a musical does music. He's been on he did the audio for like a whole bunch of movies and TV stuff. So he's doing our audio now, and it's just so beautiful to be working with my brothers who are like professionally credentialed and good at these things, to be serving the community for dreaming and sleeping. But with binaural beats, so the idea is you got one tone in one ear, one tone in another ear. They're slightly different. So there's a sort of resonant kind of wave thing happening. So you'll have something like 10 hertz, another is 15 hertz. The difference is 4 hertz. So 4 cycles. That difference, if you target that difference to be associated with any of the sleep phases, or mindfulness phases, or like, and I'm, in terms of the numbers, I really, it's like, gotta look at the charts every time I talk about it. So, but it's something like that. So in each of the different sleep tracks, right, there's a specific frequency that's targeted, that's supposed to, they call it entrainment. So brainwave entrainment. So the idea is that when people are in deep meditation or deep sleep, they send off a specific wave. When you put it on EEG, and that's like 4 hertz, that's like 10 hertz or whatever. So when you do the thing with the difference of hertz, the 10 hertz versus 15 hertz, the difference is 5 hertz. The brain now creates a sound that hears this wah, wah, wah quality that is not present actually in the music. So the brain is creating that, and then in some way, shape, or form, the brain waves get entrained to that frequency, and in that way, it's sort of inviting you into a deeper experience. So yeah, that's the mechanics around binaural beats. The white noise is a little bit, we bring that in sort of as a container for it, basically. It blocks out other sound. I think of it often in terms of the Ganzfeld telepathy test, actually. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
is that one of the ones? Yeah, is it one of the ones in Russell Targ's work or something?
Yeah, it could. That sounds about right. It's a famous telepathy test from the 60s, and it was like used a lot. If you ever see pictures of like people like lying in these weird chairs with like ping pong balls over their eyes, that is what's going on.
Okay, no, I haven't seen that. Do tell.
So there was like this parapsychologist discovered, right? Like there was a guy, I believe his name was Ganzfeld. He was an Arctic explorer. He went up to the north, and in this snow field, right? So there's snow coming down. You can't see horizon. Everything's uniformly lit. The snow is coming down by the sun. So it's just this absolute field of white. They start hallucinating. So they start seeing all these things. And that's called the Ganzfeld effect. So then the parapsychologists cut these ping pong balls, put them over the eyes, and then shine lights on that. So it recreates this uniform field of vision. And then they use that state to have a passive receiver receive images, and then they'll have somebody else like send images to them based on these like double blind card things. And that's one of the like classic telepathy test experiences. I think of the white noise as something like the Ganzfeld effect. So you can start hearing things that might not be there, or start opening because of the presence of sense, your mind really wants to make sense of it. It's like, there's a fancy word for like seeing faces and things, like bumpers of cars that look happy or sad, right? And so our mind is pattern establishing. And in that process, somehow this communication is happening. So that's a little bit of a tangent to the white noise and binaural beat, but I think of its potential as inviting in of the dream space. And as you know, we can encounter different beings and things like that through dreams and interactions. So that's kind of like a gateway experience. And the gateway experience actually was put forward. Some of the science was put out by Robert Monroe, and the Monroe Institute produced a series of experiences called the Gateway Experience. It's also called HEMISync. These are associated with the CIA remote viewing Project Stargate and stuff like that. So
yeah, I actually rewatched Third Eye Spies like just a little while ago, just to because I knew there was more in it than I absorbed the first time. It was actually quite a well done documentary on those projects, right? There's probably better documentaries out there, like on BitChute or something, that are 8 hours long that I just haven't found yet, but I'll find them one day. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff to me. Like, I mean, these are things that, well, like so many things that we don't talk about yet that we know technically are real in our countries, right? You know, I mean, less so, we have a little less of this stuff in Canada than down in the States. You are in the States, right? Correct.
I am from the States. I'm actually in Canada right now. I have a Canadian wife. We moved to Canada a year ago, 2 years ago, back from we were digital nomads before COVID.
Yeah. So, when it was still, when that lifestyle was legal.
That's right. Yeah. So now we live in a house together. We have a baby.
In Canada.
Yeah, in Canada. Yeah, in British Columbia, in outside of Cranbrook in Kimberley.
No kidding. You're just outside Cranbrook? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. You're just down the road 20 hours.
Yeah,
No,
right.
I'm
You're in Vancouver, right?
Yeah. I just like to joke with my American friends about how the size of Canada. It's hard to wrap your head around until you actually have to get on a train from Vancouver to Edmonton for 30 hours to get there.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, it's big. Big. Like that's the distance. In that time you could drive from Vancouver to LA and back.
Yep.
That's how long it takes for us to transit to our next major city.
Yep. It's huge.
I keep saying we need more people in more cities, but I'll leave that for a different guest.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you have a recommendation, but yeah. So welcome to British Columbia. I'm very glad that you're enjoying a beautiful area you must be in, assuming you don't burst into flames this summer like Lytton did. So fingers crossed there.
Yeah.
I mean that seriously. We know the beings to work with, don't we? We know the beings to work with.
Yep. The celestial beings, right? It's always a trip to see people show me the book. I've got this here and
This
wow,
is the book.
It's a real book.
It's called Book of Galactic Light for everyone listening. Liber Lux Galactica by Daniel Rekshan and some other bums. Oh, sorry, and Celestial Beings.
That's right.
Forgive me, beings. And it's a thick little beautiful book. And I like on the back it says an Enochian apocalypse working for the galactic age. And I love the this intersecting circles, Vesica Pisces symbol, really good symbol there. But you are taking, we're gonna talk about what you've been doing with Enochian magic in this book, because when I knew that this would be so much fun to show people the cover and be like, this is all about Enochian magic, like the whole thing, and they wouldn't believe me. They'd be like, wait, what? It's like being slapped in the face, and it is like, and it's like in the best way. You're like, I'm awake now. I'm awake. Okay, give me that. Let me see that. Great. And it's a very, very fine work of channeling, which I'm both a longtime consumer of, practitioner of, and critic of, as all of us who are in that realm are. But if all you want to do is grab the the Yud Hey Vav Hey book, what's the actual name of that? It's the Book of Light, that channeling book, the big hardcover, YHWH.
I'm not sure. Are you talking about Keys of Enoch?
Yeah,
this is what I want to talk. This is why I'm so excited.
That's what it's called. Sorry, I should know it's called the Keys of Enoch, except I dislike it so much that I blank out on its names, but it's right over
Keys of Enoch by the HERMETIC, right?
Yeah,
okay.
I despise that book, and I don't know why, but I do have, as I've said, mixed feelings about channeling. I think sometimes it's either right for you or it's not, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's about being objectively good or bad at all, because it's channeled information. I mean, the main person I feel that channeled information is generally for is the person getting it, or someone else present.
Yeah. It's such a fascinating, I never thought I would be talk about channeling, to be honest. 2 years ago, 2020, I realized that I was moving into a phase of relating to like extraterrestrial beings or these different sources of information. And I was like, guys, because I was I knew that like I have a past life regression, had one done to me, and I discovered, I was a channeler. I didn't have a great life back then. I was like, okay, so I'm working with the same entities. That's fine. Guys, I'm not being a channeler this life. I'm going to be a hypnotist. That's what I told them. And they were like, sure, we'll work with you on that. And it's like 2 years later, I'm like, oh, you were talking about my work, like channeling. And I guess it's exactly what it is. But it's such a funny experience to come back to. They've got a sense of humor, let's say. So
we need to come up, if we really want to progress esotericism in academia, we need to come up with like an academic word for channeling. I don't know if there is one yet, but you know how in academia, we came up with qualitative research as the term to refer to interviews with people and people's experience of things. Like if I'm telling you my experience of something, what that's called is qualitative research for non-academics out there, which is a beautiful title to refer to people's experience. But we didn't have a title for experience in academia. So it actually did need a title. And it is actually a very good title because it's about the qualities of the experience. And that's a thing, believe it or not. Despite what Karl Barth or some of our more Victorian forebears of intellectual thought would have us think, yeah, there's something to be said of the human experience after all.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I can't help but thinking stuff like dreams, intuition, and deja vu are somehow meant to indicate that, and yet were overlooked probably up until Henri Bergson took intuition seriously. I'm not sure on the history of dreams at all. Maybe you know more about that, but do you have a sense of, I definitely want to touch on Bergson more as well, as it's rare to find enough fellow lover of Henri. And do you have an understanding of how our understanding of dreams have developed over, like, say, the last 150 years, and what the sort of research has been? And I'm curious if you want to also maybe share any of your background and how you came to this with people. That might be a good little establishing bit for those who haven't checked you out before.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, I'm a longtime dreamer. I started dreaming. I mean, like we all
long-time dreamer, long-time human.
Long-time dreamer, long-time human. I've been fascinated by dreams as a way of knowledge, primarily because of some of the more esoteric or exotic experiences associated with dreaming in my life. In terms of the lens I provide, I'm educated in classical liberal arts from St. John's College. This is the Great Book School. So we study the great books. It's very small. It's the third oldest college in the nation. The United States. So it was founded before the United States. So it has a long kind of tradition there. It's based in classical liberal arts. So it involves a study of religion, like history. We go back to the source texts, have conversations on them. So that provides some context because looking at all of these different source texts, like Aristotle, talking about dreams, Hippocrates, all these different people, ancient Greeks, Latins, they all talk about dreams and interactions of dreams. The other thing is really important to know that there are like so many dreams injecting guidance into our history and politics. Even in terms of like war decisions are based in dreams, and we can think back to like the book of the Bible, book of Daniel, right? Like it's like talking like the kings, they need a dream interpreter, aka Daniel, comes in and interprets some dreams and provides some guidance. They take action. So it's really, we've had this as a human species, is as long as written history is this interaction with the dream world. It really does present in the form of interactions with non-human intelligences, either spirits or guiding forces, and often also requires a process of dialogical interpretation to make sense of, and then people actually take action on it. So when there is a capacity to take action on it, like a general or like a politician or whatever, the dreams show up pretty strong. And I think they're recorded in history primarily because of the significance of the person having dreamt it. So that's one context. It's important to know too, like dreams, even though we don't have a lot of science behind it, they've inspired science. Like Rene Descartes had 3 dreams that inspired like all of his work. So that's pretty big. And then the most recent sort of flourishing in scientific communities where academic are from the psychoanalysts like Freud in the turn of the last century. That's when there's been discourse about dreams in a deeper way. And then Jung, and then there's been some work with like neuroscience and things like that. So there's generally now two or three streams of thoughts around dreams. One is neuroscience, like what are the neurocorrelates of dreaming? Then there's psychoanalysts, like dream work type stuff happening. And then I would say actually new age magical stuff, like everybody knows it's real. Like, and so it's just how we talk about it in media is sort of influenced by how academics talk about dreams. But I would say actually dreams have never gone away. There's wisdom, like the old wise women, right? They know what's up. So, and it just is like, we have to kind of find a way to bridge that the highly kind of elitist world of the academics that have been sent, it's like in part censored by empire and stuff like that, and bridge it back to like the indigenous wisdoms and the feminine wisdom around, oh, tell me your dreams, like this sort of community building activity. So I know that was a bit of a long answer, but
no, not at all. That was perfect. How much of that is because the science is still arguing that we're basically locked in our brain and just chemical neurons and all that stuff?
Oh my God, it's a lot. A lot. Well, I mean, the paradigm, they don't know how to make sense of dreams in terms of that paradigm, because it doesn't make any sense. Like what, because one of the things is like when we survey dreams, this is from Krippner, who is a dream scientist and also parapsychologist, is like, when you survey dreams, about 8% are exotic, meaning they are telepathic or shared or precognitive or healing or any of these other magical things, basically. So it's a significant amount of dreams people are having are magical in some way. And so how do you account for that in a thing where you're like, oh, this is wish fulfillment, or this is a scenario building? So another thing that's really important to know is that dreams are essentially multidimensional in nature, meaning like you can have an objective interpretation, like, oh, objectively you were simulating your test taking scenarios and now you're better at it because you dreamt about it. And that's an objective interpretation. But you can come back to it the next day with a psychoanalyst and be like, oh, wow, turns out you may have had the hots for your teacher in that dream. What does that say about you? And you can keep doing it. And then maybe 3 weeks from now, you actually have that exact scenario and you discover it's precognitive. So there's multiple different dimensions of meaning happening at once in dreams. And then the physicalized physical paradigm, the whatever, flattens it down to an objective meaning statement, and that does violence to the nature of the dream. So they don't really understand a lot of it. There's I mean, one of the things that I find most fascinating is there's actually dialogue about whether or not we can take people at their word about their dream experiences. So it's like in a sleep lab, you wake someone up, you go, hey, what were you dreaming about? They were like, blah, angels, or like, I dreamt about this, that, the other thing. And then some people, some scientists are like, we don't actually believe they're having dreams. We believe they're making it up. This could be a thing. We need it. So there's a whole movement of skepticism around dream report. Then I really appreciate the paper. It's a recent paper. It's like, what are we doing? Why are we skeptical about this? Why don't we just take people at their word? We know that the memory shifts over time. Like if you ask them in the afternoon what they dreamt about, everyone's like, I don't know. But if you ask them when you wake up and they have the intention to remember their dreams, seems to be reliable.
Well, we've all the great thing about this is almost all of us had the experience, right? So it's not like you're talking about something that's totally foreign to any number of human beings, right? You're like, that thing where you put your head down and then you go to sleep and then you wake up and you remember stuff that didn't happen. Yeah. Like, who's going to be like, what strange reality is this you speak of? Yes. Going to be like, what are you talking about, sir? No. Yeah. So and if you were to imply to someone, can you imagine turning over and someone tells you their dreams in the morning, you say, well, honey, I think you're making that all up. like it doesn't make any sense. Like that's what they saw in their dreams. We all remember having done that. I'm just freaking out because it blows my mind that scientists would still try and claim that it's not even, that dreams aren't even happening and the person is making it up for the scientist as they've woken up or something like that. there's the backflips. I mean, there's lots of reasons to call New Agers crazy and far out. But that's a good reason to call a scientist far out, because that's more far out than a lot of the New Age things nonsense I've heard. Like to say like, you don't dream, you might just, no one dreams, we're all just making it up when we wake up in the morning. I don't know about you, but I got better things to do in my morning, and it always begins with coffee. And my first thought's not to remember dreams. That's why I like your app, because I do want to remember more of my dreams. I'd also like to, I'd like to, I have some experience with all of this stuff, but I want more. And it's frustrating to me. Intellectually, it's very infuriating, actually, how little we know about dreams, intuition, and things like deja vu, prophetic dreams. Like, I've had these experiences since I was young, especially a lot when I was young, especially a lot. Almost if I remembered a dream in the morning between the ages of 11 and 16, 17, 18, maybe even early 20s, if I remembered a dream in the morning, it was always prophetic.
Yep.
And I have,
that's fascinating.
The diaries right up there. Like, they're all there. So, and there's other records in there of weird shit happening that I didn't realize till recently was that weird. Like, I did an astral travel one night, went to my high school, saw a girl from my class. A couple days later in school, or the next day in school, might have to double check, but she comes up to me and says she has a dream. She was in the exact classroom I was astral traveled to, and saw me, and we talked. And I asked her what she was doing there. She was like confused because she couldn't understand what was going on. And then she, told me the dream. And I was like, that's crazy. How is that possible? And why, since it clearly is possible, because it just happened. Like, if I had had my adult mind when that happened as a kid, I would have freaked out way more. I would have been going up to all my science teachers and every adult I knew, probably been like, please explain this to me, motherfucker. Like, this is upsetting because it doesn't fall in line with anything that anyone thinks is.
Yeah.
But it is. So
it is.
I want answers. And if no one's looking into this, then my assessment surely must be that we're all idiots.
Yeah, I'm sort of boggled by it too. I mean, I had a dream where I saw my grandfather die. And unexpectedly, my mom called and was like, "Your grandfather's dead." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." Like, and that's also another initiation experience I had into like hermetic wisdom, like being showed up and conveyed information. I got the divine commander, and I was like, this is what those beings told me before my grandpa died. Like, what the, like, it creeped me out. It gave me chills or whatever. And I'm like, there's something in this that's absolutely amazing. But it really reminds me of, so I work with, in addition to dream stuff, I work with hypnosis, and I work with extraterrestrial contact phenomena. So this is another thing. It happens, it seems like, to a tremendous amount of people that are reputable. You go, oh, wow. It's like you talk to people that, I mean, my experience is anytime I go to a party, I'm talking to somebody, they they're like, dude, I've never told anyone this, but like, I saw ETs or whatever. But a thing that happens all the time in these phenomena is like lights will literally, like UFOs come down, spaceships, let's call them space. They'll come down, they'll shine lights in people's rooms. People will go like, they'll see ET beings walking around, and they go, you know what I need to do? I need to sleep right now. If they're not freaked out by it, they just go to sleep. And what is happening then, they move from this state of like anomalous thing. They're not scared. Sometimes they are scared, but most, like, this is a thing that happens. It's a common pattern. They'll go, okay, I'll just go to sleep. It's like there's a light in the sky, a being that you've never seen with a giant head walking around in what seems like a spacesuit. You're going to sleep. How does that make any sense? But when we think about how science and how culture responds to dreams every night, like all of our population is dreaming. 8% of our dreams are like bizarre. Well, no, 74% of our dreams are bizarre. 8% are these sort of exotic kind of magical dreams. Shouldn't we be studying this? like they provide information. They've provided the structure of the atom. They provided the periodic table of elements. Like Ramanujan with his like integral theories, they literally just give him mathematical formulas in dreams. And we're just like, oh, dreams are nothing. They're just like roast beef sandwiches, poorly digested. We don't need to focus on it. And I think as a society, we're having the same level of interaction like individuals have with ETs or non-human intelligences. They go to sleep. The scientist society is like, this is too weird. Let's just go to sleep. And yeah, that's a theory. I don't know, a hypothesis.
I always forget about Ramanujan until every couple of years when I rewatch Good Will Hunting, and I'm like, oh, I should like read more about that fellow, because it is that interesting. You forget about how interesting his story actually is, right? I mean, you think math genius, you're like, okay, I know all there is I need to know about that, which is nothing, because I'm not a math genius. But who was it that who had the atom dream?
Neil Bohr.
Right, that's the name. Yeah.
So he like saw
it's almost like forgetting these facts about reality is almost like a dream. These are these facts that I feel I have to almost struggle against some sort of group unconscious to fight, to think about them and to talk about them. But everyone can talk about them almost. I mean, yeah, sorry, it's verstopft. It's very exciting to talk about this stuff with you. So we've been getting actual scientific information in dreams for a long time.
Yep.
Like stuff that people didn't know.
Yes.
And we know that we also, when we do like evocation of spirits and stuff like that, we get information often that we couldn't have known or didn't know. And some of that's been tested out, a bit. But I was saying this with Dr. Megan Rose on the last episode of the podcast, because it's so interesting and it applies here too. Oh damn, don't lose it. Right. And I was hearing that one thing they haven't been able to find in clinical tests of DMT is evidence of someone receiving knowledge that they didn't already have from those beings. And to me, that's therefore the one missing, a connecting piece that I really want to find. I want to see how do you say it? If that's going to happen. I think because if it doesn't, if we can't ever see that happen, that will tell us something, right? Something I'd obviously not like to be true, but because I subscribe to the idea this is an antenna and not a box.
Yes.
An air, what's it called? Air vacuum trapped, air locked when you buffer a computer, air. When when it can't get accessed by anything else.
Oh, I'm not sure the term for it, but I kind of get what you're saying.
Like our brain, right? So it's air locked, or
yeah.
I can't remember the term. Someone's sitting there like shouting it out at their iPhone right now, listening, I'm sure. Okay. So dreams and aliens. Something I was talking with one of my podcast listeners the other day is when you're watching those alien shows or multidimensional shows, whether it's just on Netflix or YouTube or Guy or whatever you do, they're out there, right? We've all watched them, whether sober and taking notes or stoned and smiling like a fool. Guess which one I do? No. But there's this weird flip that happens in a lot of those long documentaries where it's like they're talking about extra dimensional beings and our contact with extra dimensional beings and lights in the sky, and they're not from our plane of existence. And then later in the documentary, they go back to ancient times, and all of a sudden they're actual physical ships that physically came here and started humanity, right? I think it's the ancient aliens thing. And I've always had a hard time with this flip all of a sudden from extra dimensional beings to all of a sudden they're in actual spaceships that we're photographing and they're chasing jet fighters. It's like, because the documentarians never describe what happened there, but they're talking for a couple hours about extra dimensional astral beings. And then all of a sudden they're talking about Nibiru and crashed spaceships in Area 51. What's going on there? for someone who's maybe less into aliens and extraterrestrials, because to be honest, I didn't really take any of it that seriously until the government disclosure at the beginning of COVID. I was like, yeah, they're probably out there, but I don't know if they're actually flying around our planet. And then the government's like, yeah, they're flying around our planet. And everyone's pretending like they didn't say that. Like, I even have friends who are like, oh, aliens are nonsense. And like, you know, he's a buddy at Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm shocked to hear him say this. He's like, there's no evidence. No one's ever seen anything. The government say it's all fake. I'm like, did you not hear the thing that the whole world, like, you know, Israel guy, and we've been in touch with them for like that was crazy, right?
Yeah.
But my buddy hasn't heard any of that, or if he has, he rejects it out of hand. Yeah. Even though it's so that's interesting. We could talk about whatever's going on with the world post-COVID alien revelation, but we could also talk about the roads are diverging in this yellow podcast wood here. Or we could talk about people's seeming out of hand necessity to reject things that even now our scientists and government are confirming.
Yeah.
More interesting to you.
So it's like a term that's helpful is ontological shock. That is in terms of discussing this. Primarily, this comes from the work of Dr. John Mack, who was the Harvard psychiatrist in the 90s that was commissioned by the US government to look into the sanity of those pilots who are reporting UFOs. He's like, wow, actually, they're really sane. They are purporting, or they're talking about interactions with ETs. And he's actually a really interesting figure because most of the acceptable hypnosis for this sake of like ET interaction really does have a kind of negative vibe to it. Like they're here stealing our genetics kind of conspiracy theory. But John Mack was like, actually, no, it really implies a almost shamanistic animistic worldview where we're more than our bodies, where it makes sense, astral projections and thing. These beings are highly developed psychical entities that are interacting with us in some way. Some of the time, the initial interactions are traumatic, especially in the so-called abduction phenomenon. And so there's trauma, but then eventually people end up having kind of integrative experiences that lead to a greater sense of spirituality, and it's almost like a shamanic journey, shamanic initiation journey, as he saw it. That kind of journey is actually backed up by the only statistical and scientific study out there about experiencers of contact with non-human intelligence and UFOs, and this is the Beyond UFO book. It was sponsored by Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man on the moon. He made the Foundation for the Research of Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experience. They interviewed 4,000 people. Their conclusions are, yeah, it's really traumatic to start out, but like after a while, it's positive. You have a development of these psychic gifts and spiritual awareness and stewardship of the earth. So anyways, John Mack looked into the sanity of these pilots. He said, yeah, they're pretty sane, except they have extraordinary stories. He offered a notion called ontological shock, meaning it's shocking actually to our being that these things exist. Like we're not alone in the universe. We're not the pinnacle of society or like progress. We're not just our bodies. We're actually telepathic beings because we're having interactions telepathically with these things. So it's just shocking. And he says most people would much rather think of it like a dream, than integrate the knowledge that we're not alone, primarily because at the time of his writing, there wasn't like the 100th monkey thing, right? Back in the 90s, we had X-Files, super scary. We had super scary media narratives. We had untrained hypnotists informing our public understanding of abduction. So these basically it's like there's like a history professor and an artist going to town thinking that they're trained psychologists or hypnotists, and they paint a really gnarly picture of abduction that we're still suffering from nowadays. So back then it was like really challenging to go, oh, I've had a interaction with these beings. They didn't butt rape me, basically. They had a telepathic interaction with me that encouraged me to recycle or whatever, or to like be in tune with the earth in a deeper way. They talked to me about past lives or whatever. So that's ontologically shocking, meaning our concepts of reality of what is possible to be really needs to shift in the integration of these experiences. And so some of that experience we're having as a culture goes like, we don't actually have words and concepts. We don't have an ontology for this whole situation. Things are shaking up. The US government is really fascinating, the recent hearing, because they rejected, they're all talking about phenomena, right? Like UAPs as phenomena. We know from qualitative research methodologies, phenomenology is one of those qualitative research methodologies that relies on narrative accounts. But here we've got congressmen going, oh, is it gas? Is it solid? Oh, let's throw out the majority of our 400 record database because they're anecdote and narrative and qualitative based about a phenomena, probably collected in a phenomenological research methodology, talking about the unidentified aerial phenomena, and they're rejecting it for the sake of sensor data or something like that. So that speaks to me to be such cognitive dissonance around it that it just betrays everyone's acting from not the intellect, but from a reactive sort of programmed, subconscious, almost triggered state around it, because it's scary to shift your worldview.
Yeah. It is scary. I think that probably answers the question of why some people just pretend we're not even having government disclosures right now, which is too bad, because it's an exciting time. I mean, to at least ask questions, if nothing else. I mean, and a lot of those reports are, yeah, as you mentioned, very shockingly credible. Some of the, like, I mean, the David Fravor guy that everyone's watched by this point. I mean, he must be one of the most no offense to the sir, but one of the most boring human beings I've ever had listened to talk. Like, I just found him dead boring. He's a completely normal, probably fighter pilot type of guy, which really is not my kind of person I go for beers with. But the story, like, it's not interesting to me. His life, he wasn't a fascinating, he's just a regular guy. That's what I'm trying to say. He wasn't far out. He's not into crystals. He's not into anything, didn't want drama. Like, he's so boring, he's credible. That's what I'm trying to say. And though, of course, I calling him boring is probably not right, but I want to get across the impression I've gotten from all the, like, what is it? I think 7 hours I've listened to him talk. Like, if you count the two, the AI podcast and the other major ones he's done. And so that's a lot of listening to this guy talk in a very sort of calm, collected, rational, very grounded, monotone way about the most insane stuff ever. Like, he's not, it doesn't sound like to me like he's talking about government drones. Do you think that's what's going on with the drone thing? Is that a disinfo thing being put out by agencies in the government, that these are all just drones, advanced drones?
Well, yeah, there's a sense of there. I mean, I think that it's providing a context of doubt, right? Like, what is actually happening? The biggest thing I see is the shift away from from my point of view, interactions with UFOs and extraterrestrial beings reveals we're psychic beings, not limited to the physical body. Like, we are the antenna, right? We're pulling in something else. How does that work? We don't actually know. But it is not a Cartesian Newtonian worldview, doesn't cut it. I mean, the closest we've got is like quantum mechanics, observer principles, something's happening. And so interaction with these things really shows that. And any conversation that brings it back to the physical, oh, is it in sensor data or not? Maybe it's a drone or not. You don't doubt if you have telepathic communication, if a drone is doing that. I mean, there are conspiracy theories that they can beam in information and you can hear it, but actually anyone who's practiced meditation or dream work or angel communicate, whatever spiritual path you have a sense of personal discernment that you can use when you interact with these space. I'm calling them like psychic space people in strange spacecraft. they tell you, it's like, hey, by the way, you're telepathic, you're receiving this message. And some of that actually has the effect of putting you to sleep. And sometimes you remember it like a dream if you can't handle it. But there's all these anomalous paranormal events happening around it that are kind of undeniable. So to start to bring the lens back to the drone, hey, this is a physical thing from a foreign adversary or whatever, really takes the conversation away from where it wants to go, which is how can we actually have telepathic communication with these beings? How can they respond to our thoughts, right? Like people see UFOs and they go, I'd love to see if it did a flippy flip or like stop in the air. Maybe this is they have a sense of interaction with these lights in the sky. At least some people do, that show, hey, something is happening. Either that drone is reading my thoughts and changing its behavior, or there's some level of psychic communication that is unfolding, and that these interactions aren't just by accident. There's a reason behind them. Like that's another thing where it's like, it's not just it's not like, oh, we don't know what's happening. Oh, there's like maybe it's a foreign adversary. It's like there's a generally a specific reason why those people in this spacecraft are like coming here and interacting with people. So yeah. Oh, hang on a second. You're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. The lights in the sky that we're seeing, we have so much footage of now, and we even have, a lot of them look a lot more than lights. So like, do you think they're a mixture then of physical and extra dimensional? Because they blip out of, they move around, they change direction, then they just vanish, and then they might appear a little ways away. A buddy of mine has a cool YouTube channel where he goes into his backyard and he's trying to signal them, and gets weird responses back. It's very, very interesting YouTube channel, and I'm really glad he's doing what he's doing there, because like, why not? I don't I watch the videos and I don't have those lights going on in my back sky. I mean, well, Vancouver, you can't even see the stars, but maybe more out in Cranbrook. But we do have a lot of UFO activity in British Columbia, a lot of sightings, especially in certain areas like around the island. And we could talk about the Raelians if we want to get really far out, maybe. Oh yeah. Yeah. More like bonus segment kind of stuff. Segment on the Raelians. Let's get into cloning and aliens. But they're over there on Vancouver Island, right, doing their culty thing, and no one really knows what they're up to. I mean, the conspiracy is that they have advanced human cloning plants, and that's where Harry took Meghan Markle to clone her on Vancouver Island before they went to LA. That's a great one. Saw a video on that. It was so entertaining. Oh my God. Check out the cloned Meghan Markle stuff if you ever can't sleep and need to kill 10 hours. But they're doing who knows what they're doing over there. They're probably just doing what we're doing. I don't know, just in a commune style, but I don't think they're actually cloning English royalty. But who knows? No. So you have any sightings up where you are in the?
Oh yeah. So I've seen a few. I mean, working in this field is like, I've tried CE5. It happens. I don't report them. I don't. It's like I leave it sort of ambiguous. Like, oh, this is a experience. It's like a beautiful experience. I'm not out to like prove that I've had sightings or whatever. I rarely try to take photos. Recently had a couple experience last 2 weekends ago or something. We saw a couple things in the sky in the daytime that looked very similar to those like oval things moving around. They could have been birds on the thing. They could have been other things. Who knows? That kind of thing. I mean, even when we do CE5, and we've done CE5 with a couple of people that are pretty practiced at it, it's like
the listeners
is what CE5 is. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. This is a protocol put forward by Dr. Stephen Greer, who also has some issues in terms of talking about, like, were those drones or not, is what people say. So it's basically the idea that, well, if these are psychic beings flying around in spacecraft, they can hear us, right? So why don't we say, hey, we want to interact? And so it's really putting out that invitation to interact with these beings. They'll show up in the form of lights in the sky. Sometimes they respond to thoughts. sometimes what happens is you get together a group, you do skywatch, you see, oh, maybe that was a satellite, maybe that wasn't, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Then at night, maybe you see a ghostly figure, and then at dream time afterwards, stuff happens. So it's really putting forward an invitation, and it's evocation. Honestly, it's evocation. So and we use the term CE5 or protocols because people don't have a memory as to what the seances were like in the early 1900s, or what, this sort of like process of summoning and evocations like. But I think we have a long history of interacting with these beings. It's just in this paradigm now where we want to identify things as physical or extra dimensional, like you were asking. I would say it's everything. We've got everything we're dealing. There's many, many, many different types of beings out there. So we're dealing with many different types of stuff. My own personal theory about CE5 and the lights in the sky is it's like a physicalized mediumship experience. We're actually projecting them. That's why nobody likes that theory. But like the same thing with the radio contact methodology, which is putting out two exact radios. If one is going off and shattering and the other's not, and they're both on the same frequency, both identical, that's fishy. That means some anomalous behavior is happening. My personal theory is that ETs are psychically connecting, and that the human aura is blasting the radio, which is why we get some incoherence there in the anomalous behavior. But again, some people like to imagine people in spacecraft shooting a laser at one of them or whatever. I don't know. So there's a vast amount of theories out there. There are anomalous phenomena. What they are, how they are, is I understand it to be like a personal discernment thing, like just like dreams, right? You've got prophetic dreams. I've got some precognitive dreams. Some of my dreams are wish fulfillment dreams as well. Who says what is what? Well, the dreamer gets to say that. If you're then going like, oh, you need to listen to my thing, and this is how you need to live your world, that's stepping outside of the bounds of ethics in terms of discernment. But if you're not doing harm, you get to decide sort of what it is, so long as it's like logically consistent with, there's a lot of different qualities and steps to go through with this discussion. So yeah.
Trying to grab onto a couple different pieces you brought up. It's great stuff. So Cartesian dualism is obviously a problem we're still wrestling with, because we have a hard time, even though we as in science have understood many non-physical forms and forces, as evidenced by our fabulous world these days and the way we're even communicating now, which I remember in early 2000s, a job mentor I had for just a job I had in sales was telling me we were going to be doing this really soon, and I just was like, maybe not that soon. But he was right. He was completely right. I guess if you're a bit older, you sort of can see these things moving at a more realistic pace, and it's led me to of course wonder, like, is this actually the time in which humans are really going to start to get a bit more nuanced in our understanding of the difference of reality between physical and non-physical? It's challenging, of course, because we want science to go there with us. And when it's not, though, we push those boundaries on our own using whatever understanding of science we have, whether, even if it's ancient science like magic and evocation, of course, which we are going to have a fun time getting into discussing the John Dee of it all, and how 500-year-old Enochian language and magical techniques led to 400 pages of channeling the Aethyrs. That's but I do want to just a little bit more about with the alien of it all, because there's some things there that just don't get to ask many people much, and I'm not in the alien space, right? It just doesn't, but it does have crossovers a lot of with the occult, of course, as demonstrated by your book of Galactic Light. So flat out, do you think like the what's the problem with understanding? I never seen the term EDT before, but of course it makes perfect sense. So you have ETs and EDTs, extraterrestrials and extra dimensional.
Yes.
They just EDs.
Yeah. Yeah, that term is I use primarily because we have a cultural understanding of what an extraterrestrial being is, but actually we don't have a lot of evidence for them being physical bodies from other planets flying through space to come here. There seems to be something else. Also, the capacity to shift through dimensionality. There's a brilliant paper put out by the Exo Studies Institute, and it's basically, it goes through and it's like, collects all the hypotheses. There's 10 active hypotheses like around these things. Oh, they're extraterrestrial beings. They're ourselves from the future. Oh, they're fairies. It turns out all of the, like Jacques Vallée, it's a beautiful, I love Jacques Vallée's thing where it's like, these are fairies. They behave like fairies. They're stealing our babies. It's like that kind of thing. So it's, yeah, right, I know. There's all these different hypotheses. This Exo Studies paper, Our Wild Cosmos, puts up. All of them are happening. All of them. This is the 11th theory. Is a mutual enactment hypothesis. It's all like, another theory is the dark secret space program sort of thing is happening. Like the Nazis are on the other side of the moon. It's all true. It's all interacting in bizarre ways we can't understand. So in that way, it's sort of like, we're talking about extraterrestrial beings like we imagine ourselves. Like, so SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, does something great where they're like, we're looking for life like we know it, right? So we're not necessarily looking for things we wouldn't recognize. So it's something like water-based, something like carbon-based, something like humanoid, something like with a mind that can dream, that kind of thing. So those are like extraterrestrials. It's really easy for us to kind of imagine like the Greys or even the reptilians or all these different species. But then the extra dimensional is like, what is it? Because there is this sort of intersection between paranormal events and ETs. And so it's sort of just a catch-all phrase, like anything out there that's kind of like this. Yeah. Yeah.
I apologize for the noise that suddenly started outside my window. Is it too loud? Can you hear that too loud?
Not at all, no.
Oh, good, wonderful. I'm trying to do what little soundproofing I can, but I could do better. Yeah, I'm glad it's not as loud for you as it is for me. Hopefully it won't bother you listeners out there. This is what happens when we podcast in the middle of the day, but hey, we gotta work with our schedules, Yeah, to that point, hopefully I sort of lost some of my thoughts there, but because some of the pictures, especially the Air Force ones from the US Air Force, look like very physical vehicles, like metallic, like pyramidal, different shapes. That's something that's thrown me because the radical array and variety of shapes we got now. I'm not sure if that makes me more confident or more skeptical. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like
where I'm coming from there.
Yeah,
like, I don't know what to do with it. I mean, none of us really know what to do with this, right? Unless you're like, on the payroll of MK Ultra or Mockingbird or something like that.
Yeah,
Mockingbird's still around, right?
Oh, I'm not sure. That's the one that like is planting false information in like narratives and stuff, right?
Yeah, that's the one that influences Hollywood, but I haven't seen any government influence in Hollywood.
Oh yeah, no, me neither. I think we're done with that. They said in the 90s that they stopped doing their remote viewing too as well, because it's not there's no proof for that. Anyways, yeah,
except for the main remote viewer dude vanishing and then being fake declared dead by them.
Yeah,
they're like the guy who was best at it and that they sequestered to do it for them for all these years, and they cut everyone else off. They're like, it doesn't work, so we're going to take the guy who's best at it, and he's going to come do this thing. Oh, wait, he's gone. He's vanished. And then years later, oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
Can we see the body? No, please don't look in that grave. And it's like, clearly they're still doing it, and they don't want people to know how effective it is because they don't want other governments to know how effective it is, though the cat's probably out of the bag. Who knows? But I really doubt they would be doing something that presidents have it, the famous president stuff on live TV, like saying, yeah, our psychics found this person. And that's, he wasn't joking. He was like, yeah, they're useful people. And it's taken my whole lifetime to actually realize how seriously the government's, or the US government, at least as far as I know, has taken this stuff and just not wanted other people to know that, which is all kinds of odd in some ways. In some ways not, but it's definitely frustrating as a species. Right? You don't want the forefront of human knowledge to be concealed by the people discovering it.
That's right.
It's kind of evil, actually. Really is, but that's good news. Governments are evil. Yay. Welcome to life. Before we move on from aliens, also, can I ask you what you think of the Israeli official and his story when the U.S. government released the information early COVID about the UFOs and all of this? This Israeli government official, for those of you who don't know, came out and just gave a whole spiel, a whole story. I think he even included Canada in this sort of thing. And I don't remember if he mentioned Trudeau, but he mentioned, I think, Canada as well, being fully aware of everything he was saying. And his story was basically that we're in full-on galactic communication and alliance with multiple races of aliens. But then the problem is, well, I don't know if it's a problem, but he's a really credible Israeli high up government guy, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was like a defense minister or something.
Yeah.
I tend to look at.
He didn't. It's not like he was trying to get. I didn't feel like he was trying to cause a splash, really, or too much of a splash. I felt like he was just like waiting. It seemed to me like he was just waiting for the U.S. to give the go ahead. And when the U.S. said, "Yep, it's real. These things are real. We have been seeing them for a long time. We don't know." It was like he got the go ahead, and he's like, "Finally, I can tell people the truth." And that's what he did. And then he went away. Never heard from him since.
Yeah. The narrative of Galactic Federation, galactic communication, that is prevalent in like the New Age, that is prevalent in like secret space program narratives. It's just like really hard to parse out. I personally get skeptical of any mass media around anything, right? So I understand them as sort of like a dreamlike experience, because at some point I've been so disillusioned by mass media. I'm like, there's nothing in here that is strongly like, there's no strong I don't have a rapport of trust between the mass media and truth or whatever. But it is, I go, okay, so that actually tracks in the sense of like, if we've had interactions with these beings, if they are interested in the human species primarily because of our developments with nuclear stuff, that's one of the hypotheses. They're coming into the planet and the consciousness in part because we're evolving enough to understand them as they are, not as like a metaphor as like angels or the ancient aliens, sort of, oh, these are like gods or whatever, that these are also people. So that kind of makes sense to me, that narrative. I will say, there's like half a dozen different galactic federations out there in this space: Galactic Federations of World, Galactic Federation of Light, the like Hebron Federation of whatever. There's like 3 or 4 I know of, and there's like even more and different spokespeople for them. So I
like that stuff if it has good graphics.
Yeah, that's right. So like one of the reasons why I did the Book of Galactic Light is because I actually thought that John Dee had interactions with something like the Galactic Federation, like aliens in the guise of angels. And I thought they had a vested interest in the unfolding of empire, particularly British Empire, and then as it expanded around the globe. I thought, oh, okay, this is aliens coming in and expressing their specific interests through the workings, through the Enochian workings, or through his angelic communications that rendered the Enochian workings. So that's why I thought, to be honest, I didn't know when I started the work. Like, I thought either I was going to pray every single day for 30 days and nothing was going to happen. I thought I was going to interact with kind of nefarious extraterrestrial beings. Like I thought maybe the scrying stone would like become a magic gateway, like I would see through it, like I don't know, like a magic portal. Like that's not, and that was one thing. And then I thought maybe, oh, maybe it is angels, maybe it's demons. Who am I going to interact with in this experience? I got to the point where I realized like this historic moment, the historic moment of D, the foundation of the British Empire, the interactions with the angels is so important that I'm going to dedicate 30 days, probably 2 hours a day, plus however long it took me to build my whole holy table and tables and stuff like that. That's worth it just to get the message out that this happened in our history. That, I mean, you know it, a lot of esoteric people know it. I don't know how to say it in a way that like Joe Schmo off the street will go like, oh, wow, this is amazing, but I'm trying my best. And so that was part of the inspiration for Book of Galactic Light, is to really go like, hey, there's these different levels of interaction and our governments are actually, it's not outlandish to think that the governments are in contact with extraterrestrials, because literally the British Empire was founded in part through magical communications with angels. Like it makes sense that is possible. Yeah.
Well, not only that, do you know the in Enochian, amongst Enochian practitioners, we often marvel at the fact that Enochian magic has the most testified to examples of effective magic shaping world history, which is Dee's use of the heptarchial prince Bifafes to sink the Spanish Armada at the request of Queen Elizabeth, and then when it rebuilt and relaunched, to do it again. And both times calm seas, which had been well assessed by experienced, naval officers, turned into destructive, what's the word for a storm at a sea? There's a
tempest.
Yeah, tempest.
Yeah.
And I just bought Shakespeare tickets. How can I forget that? I love Tempest. Anyway, and both times it destroyed the fleet, and there were such significant defeats that they're still talked about today in naval history, and they're very big deals. But they're even bigger deals to magicians, because the only thing that anyone did in regards to those two invasions was compel an angel to do something.
Yep.
No other real military action was taken, and it was effective in the exact same way both times. And yeah, so that might be as good as you're going to get as seeing magic working on a global stage, right?
Yeah.
When a queen says, "Oh well, what happened last time when they tried to invade? Can you send that angel to trash those ships again?" Yeah, no problem. Well, just like last time. We'll just, we did it before, we can do it again. So that's a little, it's too bad it didn't happen the third time, but I guess the, Spanish ran out of wood to make their fleet. I mean, how many times are you going to get your entire fleet be trashed? It was a major historical military upset.
Yeah.
And changed the course of the world.
Yeah.
So that's something we talk a lot about in Enochian magic when we're trying to wrap our heads around, I guess, the potential of it.
Yeah.
So in your book, for those interested, you can actually get it for free as a PDF on your website. Is that correct?
That's great. Yeah. All my work.
You're a great guy.
So yeah.
Well, you're a real researcher. You're actually on a mission. You're on a mission here. You're not a grifter, as the kids like to say these days.
Oh yeah, no, I want this world. I want a world where angelic communication is any sort of communication is respected, right? That's the world. I don't want you. It's like angels, extraterrestrial. I don't care. I want every single person in this world to be activated to their own passion, their own genius, to be living in love, in tune with the earth. And this is some of the ways to do it, is actually like confront some of the darker aspects of our history, to confront the fact that we're living in a vast community, that we can ask for assistance, like she is sinking ships or whatever. And what if 1,000 of us ask for assistance in navigating the next 200 years or whatever, 100 years? What if we ask for the assistance in engaging galactic federations and bringing us to space? Like, what if? And I think we could have a great life that way.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we got Elon doing his thing. We got therefore competitors rising up to buffer the entire industry, which is that's really good. Competition is good, as we've learned from this baby formula catastrophe. That's what happens when you get a monopoly. You get screwed. Yeah. But so you know, we're pioneering the multidimensional and the physical at the same time in our planet, whether people want us to or not, whether people think we're crazy or not. It is happening now, on the physical and less physical side, higher vibratory end. Do you have a background much in physics? I thought you might have mentioned that, but I can't recall.
When I was a kid, I wanted to become an astrophysicist more than anything. And so I went to, because I thought it would reveal the secrets of the cosmos to me, I went to Michigan Tech for 1 year. I talked to all, as a physics major, I talked to all the professors and I was like, so what do you know of the secrets of the universe? And they were like, well, Jesus Christ is the way. And I was like, oh, that's not revealed to you by physics, is it? It's faith. There's something else. There's another factor to the equation, and that's philosophy, that's ways of knowledge. And so I left physics to go to St. John's, which is like essentially gives you a degree in philosophy and history of science. So it's like, great. That was the step away from science, but yeah.
Yeah. I had a similar experience when I tried finding my educational path. It's funny, you know, how I remember asking a philosophy professor when I wanted to go into philosophy, like, what would you say to someone who has the experience of seeing light around bodies? He said, oh, well, you'd be mentally ill and you should be, you know, institutionalized immediately.
Yep.
And he looked at me, I was just like, the dead eyes, like, stare and look, and that led to his soul that was equally dead. I was like, I'm done with this. I would just walk by his classroom after that every class on my way to the gym, and go to the gym instead of his class. I still challenged the courses and still took the test, but I was like, no. And then I went to theology. Yeah. You know, because I can't learn from anyone who considers my experiences of life insane. Yeah. Mentally. Yeah. Especially given how much I punished myself in my own life with my own sense of rigorous skepticism, and I'm quite argumentative even on this podcast when it comes to anything that I can be questioning about. That's how I do it here. I know it can sometimes cause me to lose a lot of listeners because it's not a puff piece podcast, right? But that's just, we need it somewhere. You know, we got some of those out there, so we got to be.
I appreciated your comments in the AM Byte one where you were like, oh, John D. never did that. You provided facts where I was like, oh God, I'd love to just like listen, because there's this sense of like, oh, like we're not going to challenge the facts because someone's saying it, but actually, like, let's talk about it. Like, we need to have a clear discussion around it. It's not saying it's bad or good. It's just like, let's talk about the facts and then go from there. And one of the facts I keep coming back to in our world is our own personal experience of those things, like the body of light type perceptions, and like, these are facts. What is the interpretation we add to them is another question, right? But the facts is sense data. We are sensors in some way. We are sense data. We shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? The narrative and anecdotal accounts are actually meaningful, but the interpretation around them can have some dialogue, and that needs to happen. So anyways, I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah, no, I like your soapbox. Please jump on it as often as you wish.
Thanks.
If we ignored, would we even have? Would we have had the bomb when we had it? Dropped it when we dropped it? If people hadn't listened to their dreams?
Yep.
Scary question.
Yep.
Let's not ask that. So the back matter of your book is actually mostly the discussion and exploration of Enochian magic. The front matter is like what you're up to in this book to prepare the reader, and how, and a little overview of sort of the courses and classes you did and the operational stuff you did. And then the main part is the 30 Aethyrs, all 30 Aethyrs, correct? Yeah, you didn't say that. And I've tried to go through them as much as I could, but I jumped on talking to you sooner rather than later, just because I was so excited to do it. And I hope you don't mind, and we'll hopefully do this again.
Oh yeah, it's great. Perfect timing. Yeah.
But I'd love to share something. So you share your invocation to the governors before you start with the 30th Aether of Text. And we could get into the whole Crowley of it all and which order you should go in, but it's not really that interesting compared to what you've done here. You say your invocation is really interesting. It's obviously different from the Elizabethan Christian piety of John Dee's invocations, but that's what's great about it. Governors of this Aether, hear my prayer. I declare the dignity and goodness of the earth, human family. We declare the unity of our spirit, heal, guide, and protect us. May all beings on this earth enjoy equal rights in accordance with the principles of non-harm and the cosmic law of one for the benefit of all beings. Raise us up into celestial community. Let the new earth arise in light, love, and unity. Come forth here and now into this world and accomplish our prayer. Beautiful.
Thank you.
And then when you go into what you experienced in the Aether of Text, the Lord, you have a quote, and then you say, I saw a blue-robed figure approach, I saw a face emerge, I saw a vortex, or tornado, the blue-robed one presents a scroll, opens it, lays it upon the circumference of heaven. I mean, this is what a lot of my scrying entries are sort of like, more or less. This is very similar, of course, to scrying, channeling. All these things are quite interrelated. How long did it take you? Did you do that process of the 30 Aethers over?
I did it in 30 days.
Yeah.
So I did that. I started on 11/11, so November 11th, and then I started at 4:44 a.m. And then every day I would wake up somewhere between like 2:30 and 4. I tried aiming to start at around 3:30 or 4. The prayers, I'd do the calls. It would be like 45 minutes to an hour of chanting, and then the visionary experience was like somewhere between 15 minutes and an hour. So that was like every day for 30 days.
Yeah. What was the experience like, P? I'm sure. Yeah. Please get back on your soapbox and just talk about what the entire experience was like, because this is something definitely my listeners want to know. I've worked the Aethers. A lot of us have worked the Aethers. Some of us have done a few over many years. Some of us, like Jason Liu, dropped acid and did them all in one night while having group sex, I believe. So there's many doors to go through. Some more galactic, some kinkier, I guess, and some more psychedelic. But what was your experience of all doing all of this hardcore channeling that I'm sure John Dee would be delighted to see? I mean, he'd wonder what happened to Jesus, but we all do.
Yeah. I mean, the experience was so interesting. Like I said, I had no idea actually what to expect. I was thinking kind of like, I was thinking actually from the point of view of like colonialism, like we were like D maybe interacted with ETs that had like a nefarious empire, kind of like the notion like there's an evil alien empire that's like secretly pulling strings or whatever. I thought we need to address this. It needs to be addressed. I was guided through, it's going to sound crazy, even for everyone, even based on like the UFO talk I've done for all of the community. This is like one of the craziest things. We did a CE5 event, a retreat on near Sale Mountain near Revelstoke with a buddy of mine who was a client who actually has incredible contact story. But we were there, we saw like a daytime Tic Tac UFO. I didn't. Everyone left the camp And I go, oh, thank God, now's the time I can meditate. I start meditating. They see a daytime Tic Tac UFO go across the sky. They call to me. I don't respond. They get back. They're like, oh my God, we saw this Tic Tac UFO go across the sky. And they go through the discernment process. I'm like, that is so amazing. Why didn't you call me? And they were like, we did call you. And I was like, what was I doing? And I was like, holy shit. Oh my God. It was like this sort of spiritual mediumship experience. Like I studied spiritual mediumship. They show up, the spirits show up like here for me, like not center, but just slightly there. And it kind of like give me images or whatever. And it felt exactly like doing a medium reading. I'm not a medium, I don't practice mediumship, but I studied it once for a summer. And so I was like, that was happening. And it was telling me, so go into John, like start this work, look into it. I had this experience of like a mysterious infection in my arm after going to the British Museum and looking at his stuff. And that really shut me off from this inquiry for 7 years. This moment of the UFO, Tic Tac UFO and the spirit. And I go, maybe that was John Dee's spirit in a UFO, like time travel to the future. I'm like, this is, I actually took that.
Make a t-shirt. She wants John Dee in the UFOs if you buy.
Isn't it weird? It's like, but I was like, but it's actually like, if I go to my training, this is actually the closest expression I have to like what happened. Like this is and so I'm like, so that's why the prayer is really set in a context of invoking these things. That like if that's possible, like if it's like a 0.0% chance or 0.01% chance of that actually happening, John Dee's spirit coming to me in a UFO to invite me to do this Enochian ritual, I better take that seriously. I mean, that's a good enough chance. I mean, what's the worst that can happen is I'll sit in a room doing silly things with like this sort of like cool language, and that's it, right? Like that's it. So I was like, I'll jump in. I'll go all into this notion that like perhaps there's a capacity to invoke an apocalypse, to bring about the new earth, to invite these beings into the world that are just waiting for invocation to help move about things. And so really I had that kind of heightened receptivity. I received a lot of guidance through dreams. Oftentimes I'd wake up, my sweet wife is so good to me because she would be like, oh, that's wonderful. Tell me more about Agrippa at like 4 a.m. I was like, Agrippa is this is it. And it's like, so she would do that. She's the reason why the book is honestly published. I've cited that she's the reason why like the co-authors are celestial beings. She's like, you did not put me through that to just pretend it was bullshit or something that wasn't real. It was real. You woke up every day. You kept talking to me about this stuff. Like, take it for serious. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it for serious. And that's part of the reason why we're talking now. It's because of my wonderful, sweet, supportive wife in the process.
She sounds like a very wise Canadian lady.
Oh, she's wonderful. So
glad she stole you up here to our province.
Yeah. Me too. So she was very supportive. The scrying of the Aethyrs. So I get to there. I'm like, it's like it took a lot of work. We were pregnant at the time. I'm starting the Dream app. I have a nonprofit going on, making ends meet, and I'm like painting these little like the Enochian tables, right? Like, and they just have to be perfect. I did them over a few times, and like. So everyone was really supportive about that. I had the experience of scrying actually was like a surprise to me at how potent it was, but also how ephemeral the experience was. It reminded me often of my clients in trance.
We're working on some new ones. You want to see them?
Yes. Yeah. Oh God, yeah. Great.
Picture of my high school got stuck to the top. You want to see me in high school?
Yeah. Great.
Pause it, see if you can find it. I'm just joking. Oh, wait, there I am. Nice. Up there, finger, white shirt, black vest, long black hair.
Nice.
Anyway, so I'm working on some new ones. They're very heavy.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna redo the colors. I'm gonna make the white parts green, and like for the white parts green, for example, on this, and do them full flashing colors.
Yeah.
Old school
Nice.
style. So I changed my mind halfway through. Now where do I put these? Yeah. Yeah, the place is just full of tools being made and remade. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your thing, but
oh no, that's great. I like seeing it.
A little bit of show and tell never hurts. My buddy just got like cost over $1,000 of wood to get the wood to make a full table proper
Nice.
size. So now we have to go do the painting, and the fun never ends.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to a time to like redoing my stuff, because I got to a point where the guidance I got was like, oh, do it by the solstice, finish it by the solstice. That's why I expedited. I think I did expedited ritual. I don't think I would ever do it so fast or whatever. I think I would do it much slower this time around, like maybe one day for each governor or whatever. But
Enochian is very flexible. That's one thing every Enochian magician has said. The reason people say, well, I did Enochian this way and it still works. So why do you say that traditionally this is the way? And it's like, well, yeah, traditionally here's a way, but it's very amenable to different modalities for whatever reason. And that's really cool, right? So that's one of the reasons why I don't poo-poo people doing things a different way, because anyone who's actually worked with the system knows that it's almost made to metamorphosize in very strange ways, interesting ways, right? Ways that do seem very fey, often very fairy or extraterrestrial. I mean, obviously they're angels, right? Wink, wink. Because they said they are, and we're going to take them at their word in the name of Christ our Lord. But the qualitative research still needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like they did show up. The thing that was surprising to me, like you were talking about angels, is like I like before this, I was like, I believed in ETs more than angels, to be honest. I grew up a Christian, but became Buddhist. I was like, yeah, spirits are a thing. I'm sure angels are a thing, whatever, right? Like, but I was like, ETs have more capacity to interact in my life than angels. And then after this experience, I really do feel like, oh, angels are real, like in a very, very real way, in a way that surprised me, in a way that I think the angels are real for us in the way that they can be real for the extraterrestrials, and that there's a really strong connection there. I think they help mediate that kind of conversation, is sort of my understanding, because I did make contact with, I think extraterrestrial beings like showed up and played with the radios. Like, I don't think those were the angels, because I asked the radio, like, so I ran, in addition to doing the Enochian magic, I had the two radios. So our little like show and tell, right? So two radios, they're exactly the same. Turn both of them on, right? If one of them talks, the other doesn't, something fishy is happening. Generally, there's not a source of electromagnetics to kick it off or whatever. But I mean, there's certain behaviors, and then they start, one of the tests is to see, like, you ask questions, and if it gives you a response. I got really kind of militant with it at the end of these rituals, because they would chatter a lot during the ritual. Sometimes they would click in tune with the chanting of the Enochian. And I've got it all on my YouTube channel. You can see it. So you can see that. I thought it was fascinating. I don't know what to make of it necessarily, except like after the rituals, sometimes the radios would go off and I'd go like, are you guys still here? And they go, yeah. And I was like, do you want me to record this? And they go, and I go, okay, great. And then I'd start recording, and then I would be like, I only have like 2 or so recordings like this that are really coherent. The rest are like clearly me being a crazy person talking to weird radios. But there's a couple that are like, I'm like, okay, so what's yes, what's no, what's other? They describe, they consistently pulse. And then I ask them questions, and I count from 10 to 1, and I give them that long, and then I move on to the next question. And then in that interaction, there seemed to be, they identified, like the people who were talking in the radios identified themselves consistently through like a couple different questions as like subterranean ET beings, something like ET beings. It's like the Agarthan network, if you've heard of that. It's like the city under Mount Shasta. It's like Shambhala. Yeah.
We have to talk about that when you come back next time, because I don't know anything about it. I just heard a peep about it the other day. Might have even been on your channel, but just 1 second to get people excited. What is going on? There's a city under Mount Shasta.
Oh yeah. So this is so fascinating. I think there's so much in this because city under Mount Shasta, it's in the 5th density. So it's not 3D. So you walk there in 3D. If you're like on your iPhone, smoking cigarettes or whatever, or drinking and like that sort of like 3D vibe stuff, you might not see something, although you might, who knows, right? You pray and meditate, you ask for contact, people will show up, light beings will show up and take you there. This is like the description. And I've gone there a few times. The closest I've got is going to a dusty lava tube and taking photos and seeing orbs in the photos, but it also was a dusty lava tube. So like, who knows?
Yeah. Not quite the same as if you're, if you like film a band performing and there's orbs floating all around their instruments and stuff. Right. Yeah. That's, any thoughts on what that is again? Just like, or your take on that again, because it's a phenomenon I've only become recently aware of, and I'm not sure how legit it is really, but I
like any of this stuff. So one of my contemplations, one of the insights, like when I did my first investigation into Dee and Kelly, when I got that arm infection and stuff, I was like, what's going on with Kelly? Like if this is like, why this whole narrative of counterfeiter with their ears cut off? I know it's like false or whatever.
It's unvalidated. It's not, and they had so many, here's the problem, right? They had so many detractors come after they were dead.
Yep.
And trying to take them down. We have hundreds of years of people trying to detract from them up to present day.
Yep.
And all we have versus their diary, one diary,
yep.
Dee's diary, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the understanding I got from that is, there might be some value and this comes from the ET stuff too. They won't show up in a way that causes that undeniable proof experience that causes the ontological shock. There's always a choice. There's always a choice of like, you can, if you want. It's like talking to channeled entities. They never tell me what to do. They're always like, if you would like, here's a recommendation. And they will emphatically say this is an emphatic invitation. And I go, whoa, okay. If they're like emphatically inviting me to do something, this is like pretty serious. Like, so in that way with Dee and Kelly, there's so much doubt around it. It's kind to someone who may be harmed by the actual undoubtable experience. And then it's so complex that it causes a journey of the aspirant or the seeker to actually go through and go like, wow, actually, the Enochian language is pretty complex. Like that maybe came from another source, but if you don't, on face value, it's just something bizarre that I don't know, maybe it's something like the ET thing is for most people. So it's similar to that. The same thing with like going into the Shasta experience and all of that is like, there is this like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You have to be in the right space. The orb thing, that's how we got on this topic, is the orbs. Yeah. I mean, I think people do legitimately see orbs. I think people do legitimately understand like lens flare and also things to be those things and misidentify those. Personally, I've had experiences of photographing in one CE5. It was one of the crazy, oh my God, it was like the craziest experience I've had in CE5, one of them, where we were just photographing randomly. It stops, it looks clearly like there's an orb type thing, like a dark thing, but it was, and then the battery died or whatever. And I was like, oh, this is whatever. The next day, I start looking at it, and a hummingbird flies right here. But hummingbird was the name that my son gave to the ship. And then it wouldn't leave the van. The hummingbird wouldn't leave the van. And then it was like something like it was just slightly it was like across these different modes of perception, these things that were like, oh, of course, it's just animals behaving bizarre. It's just camera batteries dying. Oh, it's just the lens cap. But added up together, it just is this subtle fingerprint of something across multiple modes of perception that I go, there's some level of extremely deep power here that's just subtly letting itself be known. And in that way, sometimes I think those experiences of misidentification are the soul yearning for an expansion outwards and a training of the soul to go, oh, it's possible that these things are real. And I don't know. So that's just a thought.
Yeah. It's always fun when we are, the constant exercise of banging our heads up against the limits of knowledge. It's just, orbs.
Yep.
Mount Shasta, there's so many pieces, and it does feel like a psychic told me when I was very young that my mom took me to, that angels would try and would influence us through the internet, because I asked her about the internet and what she thought about that as a famous psychic, and she was like, angels and other beings will use it actually to help influence and guide humanity. It's like, oh, that's very interesting, cool. Yeah. And but it's something I've kept on the back burner and thought about over the years. There's certainly a lot of interesting things going on the internet. Some angelic, not so much on Twitter. I think that's where the goetic demons dwell, along with all the infighting about Thelema and Aleister Crowley or whatever's going on. Okay. There's a few other main points. I know we just can't get into everything also. But on the magical Enochian front, so like you mentioned, when you were doing the interview with Miguel on Aeon Byte, everyone should know about Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio. And Miguel, of course, who does very interesting work. But yeah, things, there's some facts that we're always getting new information. Like, a lot of people think Israel Regardie published everything that existed on the Golden Dawn. Even those of us in the Golden Dawn, a long time, around that age, before people, and then we found out that he didn't. That's the short story. We found out that it was much more complicated. There was way more documents out there, way more sort of people continuing on the tradition from the good old days. And just like the whole Golden Dawn world's really expanded in the last few years, last couple decades, way more than it had been known throughout the 20th century. With like, so a lot of people complain it's all published, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, most of the stuff I want to know isn't published, and I'm just there trying to, once in a while, I might get a little picture of a unpublished document from someone, and I'm like, thank you, that's really nice. And all of us in the Golden Dawn tradition are quite pleased about the current state of sharing some stuff that's never been out there before, and new releases of books like the Pat Zaleski's Golden Dawn Rituals and Commentary, which is what the Golden Dawn actually did back in the day, more or less, compared to the Israel Regardie abridged and highly altered stuff that he put out. It's still the main body of work, of course, but when it comes to D and ceremonial magic and its development, we also see that some big changes going on, because we've moved away from some practitioners. One of the most exciting things happening with practitioners now is moving away from the trance self-hypnosis side of evocation to people like I talked with Adley Nichols on the podcast. He's one of these Solomonic practitioners who is also a Gnostic priest, but when he does his magic, he doesn't dim the lights and create a trance-like meditative atmosphere. He keeps his monkey brain even going, criticizing and questioning what he's doing and seeing while he's even doing, evocations from the Heptameron. And when he gets a communication or sees something, he wants it to be almost, it feels like invasive on the normal humdrum waking consciousness. Sure, he's in a sacred mode. Sure, he's an ordained priest. You know, who isn't? We all take this stuff very seriously, but we also want to challenge ourselves at the same time. And so when he says he sees running water, he's not talking about in his mind. When he sees flickering lights, he's not talking about it in his mind. And it's is tricky stuff to talk about, because you don't want people running off there trying to recreate a dark song, right? And get necessarily too far out there in what their supernatural expectations are. Because I prefer, I don't know where you stand on the metaphysical questions, but personally, I'm a naturalist. I don't believe there's a supernatural reality beyond nature. I think nature is all encompassing. We just might not understand the full extent of the ecstatic semiotic folds of nature and pre-nature and the underconscious of nature, as Goethe would say, natura naturans and natura naturata, right? Nature naturing and nature natured. So the expansion of studies from Dee's time through the New Age to this current contemporary milieu is just one of challenging all of these different things, right? That we've got the challenge to Christianity has happened, and that whole cultural view of magic as something that is either within or without of Christianity. It's either part of it or against it. You know, it's framed often in that, again, very polarizing way. But now we're going back further with people like Jake Stratton Kent, understanding the real history of magical relationships. Stephen Skinner, all these great researchers and hardcore academics are placing magic in its proper understanding historically, and that's opening us up to new ways of practicing it. And that's what's really interesting to me. And you've really taken the ball and run with it in a totally different direction, into the realm of dreams and the alien question and all of that. Do you have what are your sort of plans to take it further, and what else are some of the lessons that you think you might have gotten from it that you could leave people with? Because I know we just have to wrap things up, and really appreciate the time you've shared with me today. I'm very much hoping this is part one, and hopefully I'll see you somewhere in the BC wilderness camping or hiking someday, or spotting UFOs.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you an invitation for the next CE5 event. I think that would be a blast.
I can't leave Canada, but I can travel within it. Well,
yeah. That's what I'm talking about. So
yeah, we're still in lockdown here, people.
So
well, only the undesirables like me.
Same here.
You're an undesirable.
Yeah, the next steps, to be honest, at the end of the book of Galactic Light, I kind of was like, oh, okay, maybe I don't have to do Enochian magic. Maybe I like worked with it. So I shifted my hypnosis practice from cosmic dream hypnosis to cosmic dream sanctuary. I'm really creating a space of online community, of using the hypnosis and dream work as like a ministry sort of thing. I mean, in the chants, basically at the end of it, they were like, oh, just so you know, like you did the chants, you said you're a minister of God seeking undefiled knowledge. Like, we took you at your word, you're committed. Like, I'm like, oh, am I? Okay. So I'll do it. Sure. And so that's why Cosmic Dream Sanctuary is a thing. That's why I'm offering services as ministry. That's why I've offered the Book of Galactic Light kind of as a scripture, but even in the Book of Galactic Light, I'm saying like, hey, this is really, I want you to see yourself as priest or channeler or whatever. This is not, I'm not like going, hey, this is how it is. I really did this work to go like, hey, anyone can do this work. You can really connect in if you want. I mean, if you want to read this stuff, I mean, like, I love reading other people's stuff too. So by all means, let's share it. But also, like, it would be one of the greatest sadnesses if someone only read my book and didn't reach out for their own communications. It's like, hey, it's here. We need that. The thing that really needs to shift is not an intellectual thing necessarily, as a whole body thing. And I see that the interactions with the angelic beings, they offer, that's one of their offerings, is a sense of entrainment and teaching. It's like they have a frequency that comes in, your aura can feel it, and you're sitting with it, and you're shifting with it. And it's just like relating to like someone who might be like calm or peaceful or knowing, but you change upon interacting with it. It's like, and so that's the invitation that I'm trying to bring forward with this work. I did channel them recently. I did. So I got to talk to I was like, my son is homeschooled. So I got really like, sometimes we're good at it. Sometimes we're bad at it. And so
I've homeschooled friends. I know what they're going through.
Yeah. I was like, okay, so all I need you to do is like relate to an adult teacher 3 to 5 times a week, 30 minutes to an hour. That's it. That's all I'm expecting you for school, like whatever. That seems really reasonable. And I was like, I was really charged about it. And I was like, how often do I personally relate to teachers in this way, right? Like I've had this beautiful experience. They wrote a 400-page book with me, these sort of angelic entities. How often am I actually creating space like that? I was like, not that often. So I reached out to them, and I basically, this is embarrassing, but I was like, I wrote these questions out to the angels, trying to trick them into saying I don't need to study Enochian magic anymore. Because it's so complex. Not a lot of people understand it. It's like so much reading, and I love it, but like it's just too much sometimes. And I'm like, okay, so now that I'm done, I don't need to understand this or whatever. And they basically were like, well, you don't have to study it in the way that you might expect you have to study it, but we really do want you to be working with the language itself. It really does have a power. Like work with it, understand that the path of study is the path of study is like will not be linear progression. Is sort of this holistic thing, but the Enochian actually is a vibratory, has quality to pierce through the veils. And they say study it, play with it, whatever you can do with it, do it. I'm actually hoping to do more study with it in some way. I'm trying my best here, but it's a lot going on.
Yeah, maybe we can do some things and make things happen. I know, I mean, my work is continuing. A lot of our works are continuing, and yeah, hopefully maybe we can do a little road trip out to visit you, and we can do a couple experiments and a video interview for a follow-up before the summer's over. Because I may not be able to leave the country this year after all, but I tried to get a ticket to see some friends in Austin, but there's no leniency even for medical exemptions on leaving the country right now, which is, why I couldn't do the thing. So it would be great to get a little trip in, so maybe we can make that happen. That would be really cool. It's going to be a beautiful summer, hopefully not too hot. And so the language, I'd love to, there's so many pieces here we're going to pick up for round 2, obviously. There's a lot of things about channeling and metaphysics I think we could talk about that would be really interesting, not to mention just the Enochian language and all of that, and the contrast. I've highlighted a bunch of things in your book, and we'll just need more time. There's a reason some of my podcasts go 4 to 6 hours. I'd love to just go through with, like, you have a scholarly understanding of this, and also you have a practice understanding, and I would love to just really tease out, and it's like, what are the misconceptions we have about D? What are, like, did he use that mirror, right? Like that kind of question. All of these things. How does this compare to active historical practice? What's going on? So I would absolutely love diving deeper with you. So thank you for having me. You're very welcome. And thanks to everyone listening. You can check us out on hermeticpodcast.com or support me on Patreon, which I'm now taking seriously. I tried to take it seriously a few years ago, but then they froze it, and they said, we'll keep charging your people, but we won't give you the money. I was like, how's that make sense? They were doing shenanigans. There's all these payment shenanigans that go on and stuff, especially when you talk about, forbidden taboo subjects like human consciousness and light and love. So thank you for being here, Daniel Rekshan. I'll formally end it here, and people can find you on your YouTube, and Daniel, what's the DREAMWELL app, which everyone should try out? DreamWellBeWell.com gets you to the Dream app. Then there is the dseti.org, dseti.org, which is the dream search for extraterrestrial intelligence. This is where a lot of the science is going.
And then there's cosmicdreamsanctuary.org, which is where I offer my hypnosis and dream practice, as well as the free copy of the PDF of the Book of Galactic Light. So, yeah.
Check it out, folks. Cheers.